5 common mistakes to avoid as a Necro. And if you already know all of this, you're a damn expert. Number 1, damage reduction. And here especially a look at the skill board and Paragon. The first one is points in Decrepify. It sounds super silly. Most of us just put one single point in. It's flat 20% damage reduction, 20% less damage taken. If you put 4 more points in there, we're at 24% damage reduction. And the thing about Decrepify is, compared to other stuff like Death Embrace, if someone is close to you, or if you're close to enemies, you get a 12% damage reduction. Well, this always works, right? No matter where you're sending your enemy standing, if he's in another room with a corpse bow, whatever, as long as he's Decrepified, and you can even temper into Decrepify size instead of Corpse Tundle size, for example, there will be a huge amount of damage reduction happening. Now on your helmet, you can get another 3 ranks, and that can be masterworked further up to 4 or even greater affixed, bringing the whole thing to 26, 27, 28% damage reduction in total. Now that's not the only one you should be looking at, no matter which Necromancer build you play. The aspect of Hardened Bones always works. You and your minions gain increased damage reduction. You're playing an Infinity Mist, Bone Spear, whatever you're actually going for, this is the easiest source of damage reduction available. Now a lot of you might say, hey Pody, why not just the Blood Golem for the 30%? The main reason is that you truly want the triple damage. What's the triple damage? Well, Blood Golem, when you actually hover over him, says that he is on a single target 3 times the damage. With a 50% damage boost, that's then actually will triple the damage boost. It kind of doesn't really make sense to go for this puny 30% damage reduction. That being said, your Paragon board has tons that you might forget about. First is a simple thing like the Darkness Glyph. Whenever you or your minions deal shadow damage to an enemy, the enemy deals 2% reduced damage up to 10. That counts for your shadow mages. So they're just attacking, 10% damage reduction. You don't even have to do yourself a single Blight shot. I might take Blight out to play the Infinity Mist version of the minion build, and I still get that damage reduction from my minions. Which brings up an interesting thought, and that would be getting the Wither board, but not to actually go into the Wither board. You just want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points. These 10 points will give you a 4% damage reduction, a 2, a 2, and a 2. That's another 10% damage reduction. And if you put that Wither board relatively early, let's say we would put it adjacent to the Cult Leader or even the Golem board, then it should be able to get this up to an 8% instead of 4%. And they just have to be affected by Blight, and that's another 14% damage reduction to not die that easy. Lastly, you could be choosing the Territorial Glyph, and the Territorial Glyph comes together with something else, because this is a 10% damage reduction against close enemies. And right now I'm tier 100 of the Pit and deeper, which means that I don't need Death Approach anymore. That bonus of movement speed does nothing for me, more or less. I can't walk faster through the enemies. I need to kill them, and it takes time. So I would yoink these 3 points out to truly take another 12%, which then adds the 12% with a bonus 24 or 28 when I finally masterwork that helmet to get the 23%, and then especially everything the Paragon board has to offer. And as a little tip here, you truly want a lot of life, because 24,000 is not a lot. I can double dip with potions, so I have the Elixir of Anti-Venom, which gets followed up by the Elixir of Fortitude as well. If I drink both of them, I'm at 35,000 life, which is great because Barrier is based on life, 80% of my max life, for example, and the same goes for your Bone Storm Barrier. Bone Storm might be another source for damage reduction, but for the Bone Storm damage reduction to truly matter, you kind of have to have that skill permanently up, which is not really a problem, but it's another 15% that you could be going for. I do like the freedom of actually choosing my Army of the Dead, because in order to damage them with Bone Storm, you gotta actually walk into your enemies. Now 35,000 is great, 40,000 would be. Number 2 is about attack speed. For example, for the minion build, we want to reach that 100% attack speed. And a lot of us, including myself, right now focus on the Frenzied Skeleton aspect that gives them another 68%. Keep in mind, it says each time one of your summoning minions damages an enemy, they gain 23% attack speed, so they need 3 attacks to always stack this up to really get the maximum out of it. Right now I'm at 100% with this, very easy. One problem you're facing by just pushing the attack speed of your minions like this is that yourself are attacking relatively slow. This does not seem like an issue, but the problem is, for example, we want to stack up the Flesh Eater Paragon node. And attack speed, or even summoning attack speed too, helps us summon these things faster, because right now that is relatively slow happening, as my blighting is relatively slow. So it might be more opportune, instead of just tempering minion attack speed and just going for all your max life and intelligence stats, to actually put attack speed on your gear, that when you're trying to summon things a bit faster, when you're trying to throw out your blights, you yourself have some attack speed. And if you do it the right way and gather up enough attack speed for your minions from the Paragon board, from your tempering, plus then ignore the frenzied aspect. This one can be dumbed if you have gloves, rings, and amulet forcing attack speed into you. And don't forget, there is a measly 5% hidden in the Paragon board. The Flash Eater node here has 1.3, 1.3, and 2.5. It is not a lot, but that 5% in my build, for example, makes worlds of a difference to truly get me to that 100% bonus. I mean, I have 35% plus 68%, 150% damage multiplier. Number 3, resistance to all elements. I am currently not maxed out. Simple reason is I'm missing the last diamonds. This one is a royal one with 8%. These one are only 6%. So another 4% gained by just putting on a royal. Wibbity wobbity, I'm perfectly resistanced out. And I'm perfectly resistanced out without having any kind of resistance stat on my gear. I do feel like that is a huge waste of the Necro to ever go for anything there. And the most important part about pushing up your resistance is using your glyphs smart. Like in my reworked Paragon board right now, I play Darkness as my first one because I don't want to push armor higher. What I do want to push higher is in the Bone Graft board, for example. That's the Bone Graft board. I have then in the Corporal Glyph, which is 150% bonus damage to magic stuff. Well, guess what? That is instantly more resistance to elements, straight up. Then we're heading over to the Cult Leader board. That's obviously where that Razor is. And in the Golem board, we're playing Territorial for that damage reduction. But as we're then going all the way into the Flesh Eater board, then again, we're back to the Amplify Glyph, which also boosts again the resistance to all elements. So these boosting glyphs are really nicely applied to just get you higher here again. Alternative, you can take some resistances in the Necro board, but that needs you to go another points down here, or in the Send of Death board, travel down here for shadow resistance, and it's mostly shadow and poison resistance. There is none else to be gained. These could be maximum out easily over the Paragon board, and then you focus on rings that have intrinsic fire and cold resistance and lightning, for example. But you need to look out for this, and that would be another annoyance, because I don't want to look, does this have 10% cold resistance? Does this have 8.3% rain? I just want to have everything up without a hassle. Number 4, and that is lucky hit chance, because I see a lot of people still be confused about it. We have, for example, Ixfeld's Corroded Signet, and it sounds so good. Your damage over time effects have up to a 50% chance to erupt, dealing damage. This sounds great, but the reality of lucky hit chance is that it's actually really annoying. Right now we have, for example, Blight. Blight has a lucky hit chance of 40%. 50% of 40% is usually a 20% chance then to trigger Ixfeld's, correct? The thing is that lucky hit chance effects from damage over time gets divided by 6 because it's happening 6 times, 6 seconds long, right? So you're kind of ending up with not having a lucky hit chance of 40%. You have 40 divided by 6 and then 50% of that. And suddenly you'll end up with a 3 to 4% chance to actually trigger Ixfeld's Corroded Signet. The same would go for the Corpse Explosion into Shadow mode to actually trigger that. And let's not get started about Blood Mist if you turn that with a Shadow. And let's not talk about Blood Mist getting Desecrated Ground, which has a base lucky hit chance of 9%. Sure, you can trigger Ixfeld's if you really max out lucky hit chance to the max. But honestly, at this point, the only lucky hit chance you want is the Wither node. Because Wither, in this case, is a safe chance. Wither says your shadow damage over time effects have a chance to explode for bonus damage. Now this is only 118% bonus damage right now, and it gets higher for every 60 int, running around with 1000 int. But I actually gathered a lot of intelligence gear, and especially greater affix intelligence gear. So technically I could be putting on intelligence, 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 and just boost everything higher to get even more out of the node, to then masterwork and get this up to 2000 and beyond. And then suddenly your Wither node just already bumped up to 28% and 142%. And this counts for every damage over time effect and is way more reliable for a shadow build than actually playing Ixfeld's, because you don't have to take a single lucky hit chance for this to actually work. Lastly, my favorite question, uniques, uber uniques. I found the Grandfather. Can I use it? What about Andariel's Visage? I do have the Harlequin crest. No, no, and no. Now let's iterate on this. Harlequin Crest is fantastic and it gives 4 ranks to all your skills. But if you're looking at the minion build right now, your damage is the skeletons and the golem, and also Army of the Dead. None of these skills profit from the Harlequin Crest with +4 ranks. Now your Blight would do more damage, but you don't need more damage from Blight. Your Corpse Tunnels will get a slight lower cooldown reduction. Your Decrepify would actually do more damage reduction. That would probably be the only thing where the Harlequin Crest makes sense. Now the Harlequin Crest for Shadow build, for example, that would be Blood Mist cooldown reduction, then your Blight bonus damage for the Corpse Explosion to be more aggravating. That's where it's fantastic because it's actually getting your baseline of damage up. End of the day, there's one uber unique that's always good, and that's the Ring of Starless Sky. That increases your damage by 40% multiplicative. So you could, instead of the minions getting 40% multiplicative more damage, just increase your damage by 40% multiplicative, and everyone gets 40% multiplicative damage. Hell, it might even be better than the Army of the Dead plus 100% damage boost, even though it's still also damage reduction, which can be really good against higher pit bosses. So that one is in the picture, as is Necromancer Might actually, because it does give you damage reduction. Generally speaking, Necromancer is one of the classes that needs the least unique items. I do have my Temerity right now, but I don't even need this. If I would just want to farm tier 61 of the pit, I think, because that's where Neath Iron starts. Yeah, tier 61 is where Neath Iron starts. Technically, you want to probably speed farm tier 70s. I don't need a single unique. My equipment is perfect for that already. I wouldn't need to masterwork another piece. I could just speed farm tier 70s without the elixir of holy bolts. And you technically don't ever need to go lower than 70. I mean, everything in the 100 range is just you patting your shoulder and, you know, big dicking around. And that's good because not needing uniques mean you have more fun build freedom. Now, a final thing to keep in mind is the Necromancer is an inherently flawed class. If you're new to it, you might notice it over time. We do have a defensive skill called Blood Mist and one defensive skill called Bone Prison, but we're missing any kind of barrier producing, shield producing, anything. Sure, we can make barrier and shield down here with a lot of bonus aspect, but we're missing any kind of actual defensive skill. Unless you use Blood Mist to just don't take damage at all, which gets boring at a point, and Bone Prison, which just literally gets destroyed. I mean, the Butcher just shouts it away with one. Some of the bosses just teleport out of it. It's virtually useless to a degree. You're just lacking actual defensive skills, as your mastery skills are only 2, where the other classes have 4 or 5. The class does seem sometimes unfinished and not really completely resolved. Yet it is one of the most fun classes that I've played since the release, and it is absolutely brilliant, has a lot of variety to offer, and you can especially do and use every single core skill to a very nice maximum effect. Yet though, it is struggling at fronts and a lot of things are not working. When try using Blood Wave as a shadow and then sometimes it feels like it's actually healing the enemy, it's a bit weird, but it's okay. It's the good kind of weird. That's us, our Necromancers. We're weird to a degree. Now, if you have any more Necromancer questions, there's the comments below. And from Sunday to Friday, we have live streams running on Twitch and YouTube to answer all the questions you might have and try out new things, experiment around. Now, if you do want to get to tier 100 of the pit, there's the build for it, not abusing holy bowls, and some general season 4 advice if you're still in the leveling scheme. Enjoy.